People use the word minimalism in different contexts. In music, it's style characterized by simplicity. There's minimalistic art that uses only simple and abstract forms. And recently, there's been a surge in people adopting minimalism as a lifestyle by minimizing their possessions to get rid of unnecessary clutter. These forms of minimalism seem to have one common denominator. They use the minimal to achieve a goal, whether it's a nice piece of music or art or a pleasant living environment. But could we apply this principle to our overall well-being as well? How can we live happy, prosperous lives without breaking the bank? How can we be satisfied without cost? How can we be wealthy with only the bare minimum? This video explores different views on wealth, desire and pleasure, and how being rich can be pretty cheap. Having lots of money and material possessions doesn't necessarily make someone rich. Often, but not always, wealthy people crave to accumulate more while being afraid of losing what they have. They live with stress, mistrust of others, and sometimes are entirely isolated from the masses who aren't financially well off. These people may successfully accumulate material wealth, but in many cases this doesn't happen without significant sacrifice. For example, someone working 80 hours a week hardly has time to relax, and there's only a little time left to spend with family and friends. An ancient Greek philosopher named Epicurus believed that we don't need all these extravagant pleasures to be happy. Expensive, luxurious vacations to distant places, accumulating an excessive amount of money and possessions, or acquiring power through politics will not lead us to satisfaction in the long run. If anything, such pursuits only make us crave for more and deprive us of time, energy, and in some cases, our morality. Moreover, according to a study in the American Journal of Industrial Medicine, consistently working more than 40 hours a week is detrimental to our health, as the risk of coronary heart disease increases significantly. Of course, not all rich people overwork, and not all people who overwork are rich, but there's a correlation. A book named The Way of Zhuangzi, written by Thomas Merton, contains a series of the author's own versions of Zhuangzi's classic sayings. The Taoist philosopher observed how the world values money, reputation, long life, and achievement. The world condemns lack of money, a low social rank, a reputation of being no good, and early death. More than 2 millennia later, nothing has changed. As Zhuangzi stated back then, people seek things the world values and avoid what it condemns. And if they are deprived of what they seek, they experience panic and despair. I quote, "They are so concerned for their life that their anxiety makes life unbearable, even when they have the things they think they want. Their very concern for enjoyment makes them unhappy. The rich make life intolerable, driving themselves in order to get more and more money, which they cannot really use. In doing so, they are alienated from themselves and exhaust themselves in their own service as though they were slaves of others." End quote. And so, there seems to be significant downsides to the concept of working hard to play hard. Is the playing worth the work? And if not, and we choose not to chase what the world values, are we then condemned to a life of misery? Or can we perhaps find cheaper pleasures that provide the same satisfaction? Some people would argue that the American transcendentalist philosopher Henry David Thoreau was a minimalist. He lived at Walden Pond in a small cabin for 2 years, with only the necessities like a bed, a desk, a table, and a few chairs. He wrote down his experiences during his stay, later published in a book named Walden. On March 11, 1856, Thoreau described in his journal a contempt for wealth and traveling compared to the simple life and the streams, woods, and natural phenomena he encounters in his own village. He figured that if he would let himself get used to luxury, distant travel, or the tastes of fine wine or brandy, then those things become more and more to him, and the simple things less and less. He would need expensive pleasure to satisfy his needs. The easily accessible enjoyments may then move to the background and may be considered uninteresting, boring, and insufficient to satisfy our needs. We got ourselves hooked on expensive pleasures, which also come with higher prices. Furthermore, some people may be hooked explicitly on the idea that the things they enjoy are expensive. The actual pleasure these things provide is secondary. We could say that the wealthiest person isn't the one who has the most, but the one most satisfied with what he has. And that being full of desires to be fulfilled is poor, but being content is rich. If thou wilt make a man happy, add not unto his riches, but take away from his desires. How can we enjoy life with minimal cost? There are different ideas on what cheap pleasure entails, as pleasure is different for everyone. And whether or not something is cheap depends on one's circumstances. For example, enjoying a nice meal doesn't have to be expensive if you cook it yourself, especially when it's a simple meal, which Epicurus would endorse. The price of walking is muscular energy, but not too much, and is, aside from that, an activity free of charge. What pleasure is most enjoyable, but also very affordable? Epicurus may have an answer to that question. His philosophy distinguished moving pleasures from static pleasures. Moving pleasures involve activity to satisfy one's desire, like eating in a restaurant when hungry. Like Schopenhauer's view on pleasure, Epicurus thought that moving pleasures take a lot of effort. Pursuing them could also be dangerous. Of course, the degree of effort and danger depends on the pleasure itself. For example, opening the fridge and taking out some food doesn't take a lot of effort, and most of the time isn't very dangerous. Static pleasure, on the other hand, takes no effort at all. It's simply the feeling of contentment after our needs are satisfied. Schopenhauer, in turn, recognizes that happiness consists, for the most part, of peace of mind and contentment. But to achieve this, we need to reduce a strong impulse of human nature, which he called the will to live, and that's challenging to do. So how do we achieve static pleasure? Is there a way to be content as often as possible without becoming an ascetic? If Thoreau, Chambers, Schopenhauer, Zhuangzi and Epicurus were still alive, they would have possibly agreed that satiating ourselves through simple, affordable pleasures is our best bet. Such pleasures are easy to come by and widely available. Making them the source of our enjoyment saves us from the stress we would experience if only what's scarce and expensive would satisfy our needs. The cheaper our pleasures of choice, the less time and effort we need to attain them, and the more we enjoy not wishing for anything else. If that isn't the ultimate form of minimalism, then what is? Thank you for watching.